let's bring in tonight's panel. Labor legend Graham Richardson and Liberal Senator James McGrath. Welcome to you both. Well, let's start with that climate change topic. And we saw today Peter Dutton accusing the Prime Minister of destroying the economy while trying to meet net zero targets. Let's have a look at what he had to say.
We want to make sure that we've got an energy policy that's working for Australians, not against them. I'm not going to sign up to an arrangement that destroys our economy and sends families and small businesses into bankruptcy.
What Peter Dutton is saying is that he won't have a 2030 target. This is an extraordinary failure of leadership from Peter Dutton. It shows he's not up to the job of being the alternative Prime Minister of this country.
Well, as the Nightly put it, the Prime Minister's attack on Peter Dutton's decision to dump the 2030 emissions target was, and I quote, a hollow distraction from the real issues of cost of living and how our nation is going to handle the inflation challenge. All right, Richo, well, what do you think? Do you agree with that analysis there in the Nightly? Do you think the Prime Minister has dredged up the climate wars once again as a distraction from his detainee scandal and in the hopes of scoring some political points over Dutton after that disastrous news poll for him just earlier this week?
Yeah, I don't think this is Anthony's finest hour. And I think Dutton has had the best of the week. And I think there's been quite a gap between them. Dutton hasn't had a tremendous time as opposition leader, but he's coming into his own now and he's doing very well. Labor ought to be taking very, very closely, watching very, very closely everything he does, because this bloke thinks he can get there.
Look, James, let's bring you in here. What is the coalition argument on rejecting net zero by 2030? Because if, as Peter Dutton says, and as the analysts say, just like Tony Wood from the Grattan Institute, if Labor's not going to meet those targets anyway, why not just put pressure on Labor over that point?
Because Labor are misleading the Australian people. They've got these targets, they know they're not going to reach them, and what they're doing is what I call dead cat politics. You get a dead cat, you put it on the table, everyone's looking at the dead cat and forgetting about the real issues. And politicians do this all the time, and Albanese is doing it. The number one issue in Australia at the moment is cost of living. It is everywhere. I was at Farm Fest last week in Toowoomba, and that's what people were talking about. And for Labor to have these unrealistic targets, but targets are actually hurting businesses, hurting Australian families, because it's driving up the cost of electricity. The coalition's position is pretty clear. We support net zero by 2050, but we want electricity to be affordable and reliable, and we want to look at all forms of energy.
Oh, Richo, do you agree with that? Do you think there will be voter frustration with Albanese returning to climate wars when, as James McGrath says, cost of living is the central issue that families are really struggling with right now?
Yeah, I think Albo's going to have a hell of a battle on his hands to convince people that his priority is greater than theirs. Cost of living, cost of living, cost of living. They're the first three issues. And you can't pretend that anything else is going to knock one of those three off. That's it. And, you know, we have to work within that framework. And that's what Labor's not doing at the moment.
Yeah, look, it's going to be a big issue. And of course, we hear the news that it now looks like interest rates aren't going to be cut until at least 2025. So just sticking with you for a minute, Richo, do you think that would rule out any early election this year? Because the argument for an early election was off the back of an interest rate cut. Yeah,
I think certainly were I in the job, I would not be going to the polls this year. There'll be no relief in sight. And therefore, you've got absolutely no advantage in going early. And, you know, people in the past, you go early if you think it's going to be a big help to you. Well, I can't see any aid whatsoever going to Labor over this. So I'd be keeping my powder dry and I'd be looking at next year.
And that is what the PM keeps saying. He keeps saying he intends to serve his full term. But the reports are, James, that your side, the coalition, is preparing for an early election. So are you expecting that Labor might go later this year?
Parliament House last week was full of rumours about an early election, whether it's going to be in August or there was one well-known Cabinet Minister who was telling people to prepare for an early December election. Look, good oppositions always prepare for an early election. And I know that Andrew Hurst, as the Federal Director, and Lincoln Follow as the Federal Nats Director, and David Littleproud and Peter Dutton are getting their teams ready. We've got candidates being pre-selected. We want an election sooner rather than later because we know that Albanese is not up to the job of being Prime Minister.
Well, James, can I just pull you up on what you just said there? Well, which Cabinet Minister was talking about a December election?
I don't want to say that, but
did he say it to you?
The building was full. The building was full of rumours about this particular Labor Cabinet Minister.
The building is always full of rumours. Always.
And
Parliament House, for God's sake.
Those rumours are true.
Come on,
Sometimes
James.
those rumours are also
Well, you probably started them.
It's just me and Richo. You're with friends. Tell us who the Cabinet Minister is.
That's a vicious and hurtful allegation. No, I won't say that. But what I'm going to say is that clearly the Labor Party are also looking at an early election. The Prime Minister has not ruled out calling an election this year. And to Richo's point, he will go when he thinks he can win. And I think if interest rates stay as they are, he probably won't go this year because of the economic circumstances. But things can get a lot worse. So be scared, Mr Albanese, be scared.
Ominous warning there. All right, let's have a look at the advice today from Australia's former Deputy Chief Health Officer, Dr Nick Coatsworth. He's told Ben Fordham on 2GB that he's not going to get another COVID vaccine. Have a listen.
I've had my influenza vaccine.
Are you still being vaccinated for COVID?
No.
When did you stop doing that?
About 2 years ago. I had 3 vaccines and that's been enough for me.
Any reason why?
Because I don't think I need any more, Ben, and the science tells me that I don't.
Richo, people would be very frustrated hearing this, given Nick Coatsworth encouraged everyone to get a vaccine. In fact, it was mandated. You couldn't go to a cafe without one. And now he says, oh, no, I haven't had one for 2 years.
Yeah, I've got to say I find that a bit extraordinary, given what he's said in the past and the way he said it so nonchalantly. It just really surprises me, and I've got to say it disappoints me.
What do you think, James? I mean, the advice around vaccines has changed dramatically. And, you know, what is worrying about this is that the reports are now that the take-up rate for regular non-COVID vaccines for children is now falling because people have lost confidence in vaccines as a result of the COVID pandemic.
And that would be disappointing if that's the case, because I'm someone who believes that people should be vaccinated and should get the jab, especially children. But what is concerning with what Dr Coatsworth said is that that he stopped at 3, but he also did say to follow scientific advice. And I'm not a scientist, I'm not a medical professional. I will do what my doctor tells me to do and what the scientists tell me to do. And hopefully they've got my best interests at heart. And I would encourage other people to listen to those people in relation to their own health matters.
Well, I have to say the advice has been confusing, especially Nick Coatsworth was a figure that a lot of people trusted, and here he is saying he's only had 3.